welcome to Leading Entrepreneurs of the World. My name is Glenn Turansky, and I'm a member of the advisory board here at Leading Entrepreneurs of the World and One Business World. Leading Entrepreneurs of the World features entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders presenting on cutting-edge topics and the latest in industry developments. Our goal is to provide the global business and entrepreneurial communities with a window into the minds of those who are shaping the future of the world. Today, we're very pleased to welcome leading global entrepreneur, Bertrand Petyt. Bertrand is an enabler of excellence, helping organizations to achieve their goals by rejuvenating management and operational processes. His methodologies include deep dive business and operational analysis, focusing on growth results and personal retention. Bertrand is the managing partner at Vitruvius Partners Group, the chief executive officer also of Ausonia Cruise Holdings, and an adjunct professor of management at the International University of Monaco. Bertrand, I've gotten to know you here the last number of months. We are so thrilled to have you join us today, and we're really interested in hearing more about business performance being compatible with social progress. So let me hand it off over to you. You steer the ship here, and then we'll join you back on the back end as we go. So thank you and welcome. So glad to have you.
Thank you very much, Glenn, and thank you everybody. I will share my screen now. Hopefully it works. Voila. So thank you, Glenn. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you also for giving me the opportunity to share this short seminar on a topic that is very dear to me, reconciling business performance with social progress. It's always something that, I have a little bit of an HR background, and I've always had an interest in understanding how two things that seem completely the opposite, business performance, where it's all about what you can achieve, and social progress, which is about taking care of the human element, how those seemingly incompatible parameters can actually not only work together, but they belong together. They actually work best if they're brought together. So thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I look forward to this presentation. We'll have, I think the presentation lasts about 30 minutes, and I'm sure we may have some questions at the end or a little bit of a debate. For those of you that know me, I like to start with stories. I love storytelling. I think people learn very, very well when they hear amazing stories. So I'd like to start with a little story, and I'd like to bring you back in time in the 16th century in Central Europe. Now, 16th century in Central Europe, something quite devastating happened, which is called the puerperal fever. It was a disease that started to spread coming from northern Italy, and it spread very, very fast throughout the whole of continent of Europe, even through the UK at some point. Puerperal fever is also called the Black Death of childbirth. And in a sense, women giving birth would die within 48 hours of giving birth without any apparent reason. And the 16th century was the century of science. So people were rather surprised, they were like, well, I don't understand. They wanted to understand what was going on about this puerperal fever. What was the cause? How could they care for those poor mothers? And the doctors at the time went viral in trying to find out, especially since in some hospitals, in some areas, up to 70% of women would die after giving birth. So in the Renaissance, it was all about science, empirical data. So doctors started studying that, and they said, well, let's do autopsies. Autopsies were never performed before. So let's do autopsies on the bodies of the deceased women to find out exactly what caused their death. And they would perform autopsies in the morning, and then in the afternoon, they would deliver babies. And they would go back performing autopsies, delivering babies at a faster and faster rate as the disease was spreading. Now, up to a time, a very famous doctor at the time, Dr. Oliver Holmes, realized what was happening. And he approached his fellow doctors and he said, my friends, we are the problem. Doctors got quite upset about the statements. They took him for crazy. We're not the problem. We're trying to help those poor women. We're not causing the disease. We're trying to solve the issue. How can you say we are the problem? And Dr. Holmes said, well, we are the problem. We are conducting autopsies in the mornings, and then straight we go to delivering babies. In the meantime, we're not washing our hands. So we're spreading germs from the diseased bodies to the poor ladies delivering babies. And those germs are infecting them and they're dying from that. Now, doctors were not believing that. And they took him for crazy for 30 years. Now, 30 years is a long time. And during those 30 years, the disease spread even more so throughout the continent of Europe. After 30 years, people started wondering, well, was Dr. Holmes right? Doctors started washing their hands. It became a practice that they would wash their hands before they would deliver babies. Now, when they started doing that, within 6 months, the disease disappeared entirely. Now, why do I share this somewhat rather gloomy story? Well, because there are two things that I'd like to keep in mind, two lessons that this story gives us that I'd like to keep in mind for today's presentation. The first lesson is, well, sometimes we are the problem. And it's important to realize that sometimes we caused the disease, we caused the issue. And it's very important to acknowledge that, to understand that. The second lesson that is even more so important is to understand that, well, sometimes, actually more often than not, the solution is right here. There's no need to look for a very complex solution to our problems, like the doctors were doing by conducting those autopsies. Sometimes the solution is right here, washing our hands, maybe. So I'd like to keep those two vivid lessons in today's presentation, because again, it's about getting things back to basics. Understanding that if we are the cause, it's okay. The solution might be very close to us. It might be very reachable. Now, before I go onto the actual topic, I'd like to go a little bit, take a little bit of a historical viewpoint, and I call it the Great Transformation. And if you look over the past 100 years, or even 150 years, what we have seen from a global perspective, from a societal perspective, we have seen that the market has pushed society on the side. Now, what I mean by that is your great-grandparents, 100 or 150 years ago, they were mostly what I call natural persons. They were part of villages. They were part of tribes. They were part of families. They were individuals in a sense. Now, today, we are mostly corporate people. And it's interesting, for example, if you walk on the street and you meet someone for the very first time and you want to introduce yourself, well, you usually introduce yourself by your name. Hi, I'm Bertrand. And then you state your trade. I'm a doctor. I'm a lawyer. I'm a business person. You know, that would never happen 100 years ago. They would rather say, no, I'm part of this tribe. I'm part of this village. I'm part of this family. So that's what I mean by corporate persons today have displaced natural person. And in a sense, in the past 100 years, money has displaced meaning. But the question that I want to challenge you with, in a sense, throughout this presentation is, well, what is the role and responsibility of business in these developments, in this great transformation? If these developments are making us unhappy and unsatisfied, you know, what can we do? And what is our responsibility as business people in some ways? And that leads us to our topic, which is, you know, well, how can we reconcile business performance and societal progress? Now, Jared Diamond, a very famous professor, I think he still teaches at the UCLA. quoted something that perfectly illustrates that, and I want to spend a little bit of time on this. Jared said, well, businesses are going to play a bigger role than governments in societal progress. It's interesting to see that up to today, most of societal progress, and I'm talking about, for example, number of days of vacation per year, maximum number of hours worked, resting hours. I'm talking about minimum wages. Everything that we consider as societal progress has been dictated mostly by governments. And I include unions in that because it's a government, in a sense, sort of structure. So governments have been responsible for most of the societal advances, so that societal progress that we have seen in the past 100, 150 years. That will change in the future, and it started already. Governments will not have the reach, the means, or the power to impact societal progress as much as they did in the past. Businesses will. Businesses will affect how we progress from a societal viewpoint. And that, in a sense, puts a lot of responsibility on us as business people. And this is why this topic of being able to reconcile societal progress with business performance is so important. And unfortunately, it's not covered a lot in business schools or in educational formats. Now, what does it mean exactly for capitalism? And we'll start by, well, what is exactly capitalism? And there are many different definitions to capitalism, right? And I put one on the screen now. It's as valid as another one, I think, but it helps me illustrate something very important. In my opinion, capitalism has two pillars. The first pillar is, well, it's based on what we call property rights. And so I own stock, I own a house, so owning something gives you incentives. If I own stock, the value of the stock increases, it gives me purchasing power. If I own a house, I probably can rent it out. Again, it gives me incentive, which is money. I'm able, therefore, to spend this money on whatever I like. So the first pillar of capitalism is certainly property rights. The second, even more so important, is price mechanism, or what I call market pricing. And this is about information in a sense. And people don't know that much, but you know that the information, and Glenn, you'll be able to corroborate that, but the information on the capital markets, if you take all the capital markets combined and you take all the information that is on the capital markets, it actually exceeds the amount of information that you have available online, on the internet. Mind-boggling, but this is actually true. So the second pillar is really about price mechanism, market pricing, valuing things, giving a value to certain items. Now, you see right away that, well, this may bring imperfections, or this may bring up questions. For example, all right, what is then, under this capitalism system, what is then the price of health? What is the price of clean air? What is the price of human relations? Capitalism doesn't allow us to effectively price these very important parameters for our happiness and our well-being on this earth. There's also the concept of price fixing, right? And very, very simply, I'll give you an example. I live in Monaco, in the beautiful Principality of Monaco, right next to it. And here, one of the specialty is lemons, right? It used to be the big industry, and even today, lemons of the surrounding areas of Monaco are very, very priced, very, very well known. Now, you go to the supermarket, you buy one lemon. Let's say your lemon is, 50 cents, right? Now, you just drive a little bit further, maybe in a different town or even in a different supermarket. You take the same lemon, probably even from the same producer, right? And that lemon is going to be, let's say, 80 cents, 90 cents. Why? what is the difference in value between those two elements who effectively are the same? So there is an issue sometimes in valuing properly certain items. And last but not least, also imperfection of capitalism is also in misplaced incentives. So I won't cover that too much. We all know about, let's say, big corporate executives who don't necessarily perform as they should, but when they leave, they have this big fat package, right? So you have a lot of imperfection that are built into the system. And I think we are at a time now when it's very interesting to look at those imperfections to understand that capitalism is a great system. How can I make it better? By integrating human values, integrating social progress. And what I'd like to cover today is, well, maybe there's a solution. Maybe there's a way to look at it, which integrates or reintroduces human elements. And when I talk about human elements, I talk about codependence, I talk about co-creation. We'll see that during my presentation today. We'll hear those two words once in a while, but also imagination, creativity, all items that are really truly human items, human factors and human parameters. Because in a sense, that's a little bit the path on which I'm trying to move forward. The reason, in a sense, why I get up in the morning and go to work, right? It's, well, how can I reconcile economics and social? How can I take that path? And I drew a little bit on a nice path on here. What is that path in the middle that reconciles both? Because without social, economics is barbarism. But without economics, social is utopia. So what is the path that goes in the middle? And today I'd like to offer 3 milestones on this path of reconciliation. Now, for those of you that don't know me, I used to work at sea. I used to be a seafarer. So sometimes you see, for example, here you see a life buoy. Well, I like to call it, it's a first life buoy. I send you the first life buoy in a sense. But you can call it, if you want to be more business oriented, it's a milestone really. So the first milestone that I'd like to cover is, well, I think everything starts with people. There is no system. And I'd like to illustrate that with this picture. Now, this picture was taken on a highway from Nice to Monaco. And I'm sure many of you can relate to that as well. You go to work in the morning, take your car, you're stuck in traffic jam, right? And you see the other side of the highway is empty, and in the evening it's the opposite. All the cars are coming back and you're again stuck, but on the other side of the highway. And this happened to me a while back, and I was stuck in this traffic. Actually, to be honest, not going to work because I don't use my car to go to work, but I was stuck in traffic and not moving. The car was stopped, and next to me there was this open top car, right? A younger guy with this open top sports car. So I could hear he was on the phone, and obviously he was getting reprimanded by whoever was on the other line, probably because he was late. And he was telling the person on the other line, well, I'm really sorry. I'll try to do as fast as I can, but I'm stuck in traffic. There are all those idiots around me blocking me. And I got upset. I was like, well, he's calling me an idiot. I'm one of them. I'm blocking him in a sense, but then I sort of realized, you know what? He's right. There is no traffic jam. I am the traffic jam. There is no traffic jam because there's world work, or because of poor weather, or because there's an accident. There is a traffic jam because I purposefully, knowingly took my car and drove away. There is no traffic jam. I am the traffic jam. We must believe in that there is a system that prevents us from changing the world. There is no system, or rather, we are the system. And the world changes when we start to change our actions, our behaviors, our commitments. So that's why we need to start with the human creativity, the ability of people to change the world. Now, we all work one way or another for an institution, whether it's a company, an NGO, or governmental organization. And my statement, in a sense, would be that all organizations, regardless of what they are, will always fight to keep the status quo by nature, by design, almost. A human organization is organized to keep things from changing, even if they tell you we're about change management. But by design, a human organization is organized to keep things from changing. Yet inside of each of those organizations, there are consciences that can rise. And the role of a leader is really to, well, acknowledge those consciences and open the pathways to utopia. So that is the first milestone. There is no system. We are the system. And as leaders, we need to open those pathways to utopia in so many ways. The second milestone that I'd like to cover is, well, if we want this first milestone to last in time, well, then we have to transition to an institutional logic. We have to start making alliances. We have to understand that there is an ecosystem around us, and we have to sort of question who is in our ecosystem, who depends from us. I'll give you an example. In 2008, we all remember the financial crisis, right? And governments did many, many things to address this financial crisis. Some of them great, some of them maybe less great. But France, Germany, and the US share something in common, in which that they have a very strong automobile industry. We build many cars, right? Now, in those three countries, governments went to the car companies and said, you guys pulled too much towards you. You need to give back. Now, if you understand the car manufacturing company system in a sense, yes, you have, for example, Ford or GM or Peugeot or Mercedes-Benz, and that will be the brand that you have on your car, right? Yet, each car is built by around 1,000 different suppliers. And those are usually small entities, small companies that navigate around Mercedes-Benz, GM, and so on and so forth. And they depend strongly from the business that those big car manufacturing companies give. And big car manufacturing companies have pooled, they sort of thought, well, the less they get, the more I get, right? And that's usually our train of thought. The less you get, the more I get. And when the crisis hit, those small suppliers were the first one hit, not so much the big car manufacturing companies. Those suppliers started to die, therefore affecting not only their employees, but ultimately also the supply chain towards building cars. So governments did something that, in my opinion, was absolutely great, to go to those manufacturing companies, car manufacturing companies, and say, stop pulling to you, give back. Understand that there is an ecosystem that depends from your decisions, that depends from you, and you need to respect, take care, cherish that ecosystem as much as you take care of your own company. Now, in a sense, this is about breaking a very important paradigm, which is creating shareholders' value. Now, I went to business school, right? And when I went to business school, something that, day after day, you were sort of taught is, well, the goal of a company is to create shareholders' value. Great. We've been really taught this again and again, and that's okay. Yet what I will challenge today is to say, well, great, but that's not enough. I want to change that paradigm. The priority of a company is not just to create shareholders' value. It's also to look into who is in your ecosystem. Who are those people who are willing to take a step aside and break a paradigm and build something with you? How can you value them and add value to them? So recognizing that you're not just a company taking care of yourself, You're part of an ecosystem of companies, of human beings, and you need to look at how your decisions affect your ecosystem. And that is the second, in a sense, paradigm. The third milestone is a little bit my favorite one. It's about the treasure of relationships. And fundamentally, this is the real issue. Again, I'll tell you a little bit, a little story. I'll take you not to the 16th century this time, a little bit closer in time. I'll take you to 2005. I'll take you in Asia, in Bangladesh. Now, Bangladesh is one of the poorest countries in the world. You probably know the company Danone, right? It's a French company, but they're very present in the US as well, all over the world, actually. And they manufacture food products, right? They're very well known for their yogurts, but not only. And they also have waters. They have a lot of different food items. Danone is a very eco-responsible company. And Danone partnered with a local bank in Bangladesh in 2005. And the bank was, I think, the Grameen Bank. And they said, well, we want to fight malnutrition in Bangladesh. They acknowledged the fact that, kids didn't get enough nutrients to grow properly. They would die of malnutrition. Danone CEO partnered with Grameen Bank and said, we're going to do something. We can do something. So they developed a specific yogurt, which was called the Soctidoy. And this yogurt had two important parameters. It had all the nutrients. In one yogurt, you had all the nutrients a teenager or a baby would need for the day. And it was affordable because it was about $1 a yogurt. Now, it wasn't the type of yogurt that you would find in a supermarket, right? Even from a taste perspective, it's very different. So you probably wouldn't really enjoy it. But again, from a product standpoint, it worked. It was only 1 cent. And it had all the nutrients. You give one yogurt to your kid, the kid had all the nutrients to live. So it would fight malnutrition in a very big way. Now, one day on the weekend, the top management of both Grameen Bank and Danone went about 30 kilometers north of Dhaka. Dhaka is the capital of Bangladesh. And they went to a small village, right? Because they wanted to introduce Soctidoy, the new yogurt, to the community. And there they arrived in the village, and all the women of the village, the men were out working, all the women welcomed them, and they sat in a big circle, about 50 women in their beautiful saris, and they sat and they waited for the management to tell their story. And well, the CEO of Danone explained, Soctidoy, great nutrients, only 1 cent, and so on. He was very excited, and there was total silence in the room, and they sort of got surprised by that. Up to the point where a lady at the very far end of the room, stood up, raised her hand very timidly, and said, "Hi, my name is Yamina, and I have a question. You see, today, I babysit the kids of my neighbor during the day. That allows my neighbor to go around all the other villages during the day and sell her milk. Then when she comes back at the end of the day, in exchange for me keeping the kids, she gives me the milk. And with this milk, I can make my own yogurt, which is, I call it mishtidoy, actually. So it works well. I understand that with your yogurt, I would have probably better nutrients. But you see, if I need to start taking your yogurt, giving your yogurt to my kids, I need to start working, because even 1 cent a day is affordable, but I need to have this 1 cent a day. So I need to start working. If I start working, I cannot babysit the kids of my neighbor. If I cannot babysit the kids of my neighbor, what is she going to do? She cannot go around the villages selling her milk. You see the dilemma here? This question is, in my opinion, the most difficult management question I have ever heard. It's been 15 years. I don't have an answer. And no one has been able to provide me with an acceptable answer to that question. The management of Danone was actually quite baffled by the question. it's why is that, in a sense? Why is this question so important? And for me, it's because, well, we are unable to see the relationship between Yamina and her neighbor as something else than the remnants of a very archaic sort of economy, something that is more of a barter economy in which there is insecurity, right? In which survival depends from someone else. And what is our economy? Our economy is actually the opposite. Our economy, and I show that on this slide, we're more in a stock economy. A stock economy is about, I own things. I don't want to depend from others. For example, if I want to go to the supermarket and buy my food, I don't want to talk to anybody, Well, maybe to the cashier, but even better, sometimes there is no cashier. I can do it automatically. Great. If I want money, I don't want to talk to a banker. I go to an ATM machine. I don't talk to anybody. I don't want to depend from others. I want to make sure I accumulate things. It's a stock economy. And those give me incentives. There is no codependence in so many ways. Now, versus the flow economy, which is a little bit the economy that Yamina and her village operate under, where there is constant risk, constant exchange. It's about reaching out to others. It's about giving to receive. Another way to put it on this slide is, well, we are in an economy of having versus the economy of being that Yamina and her village in Bangladesh operate under. Now, we have dematerialized our economy. We have, in a way, dehumanized our economy. And this is why our economy is dying, and it will die if we do not change. It will die if we do not have the ability to see the human value behind each one of our transactions. And as long as we are in this paradigm, we will not see the fundamental human value of relationship. And that is why the treasure of relationship is, for me, even the most critical parameter to consider today. Now, on this path, in a sense, I'd like to give you a quote that somewhat dwelled on me. And this quote comes from an Indian poet, if I'm not mistaken. And it goes as follows: beyond good and evil, there is a field. I will find you there. And what I'd like to say about this quote is, well, I really wish for you to sit in that field as often as possible. You will see that when you welcome human values and otherness, it's also an appointment with yourself that you will have. And the world needs you, every single one of you. And so I hope that the path we started to draw today, a little bit, helps you through this journey. So thank you very much for your attention. And let's get up and go. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Bertrand. Wow, that was fantastic. That was fantastic. As you know, I've been taking some healthcare classes here throughout the coronavirus and stuff, and I've read a little bit about the story of Dr. Holmes on how something as simple as washing your hands and hygiene kind of, while originally he's crazy, it's skeptical to the point that it then becomes best practices, right? I'm a big Neil Diamond fan, and one of his most famous songs is "Sweet Caroline."
Oh yeah.
And last year, as the pandemic was kind of raging, he rewrote some of the lyrics to come back and say hands, washing hands. So it was kind of a little look back at Dr. Holmes as we go through it. But no, it's really fascinating, because sometimes, as you said, the solution is right in front of you. Yeah. You don't necessarily need to go out and hire all of these extra people. Sometimes it's you look in the mirror and you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You know, here in the United States, over the last number of years, the whole concept of social responsibility, right? CSR reporting
Yeah.
has really taken on a whole new life. Sustainability, right, becomes even more important. Last year, one of the largest business lobbying groups here, the Business Roundtable, rewrote their purpose from driving shareholder value, and they replaced it to stakeholder value. Recognizing that it's not just profit, it's not just the people who own the stock, it's the employees.
It's the impact.
Right?
That's
the employees, right? That your customers, your vendors, the community you operate in. I've worked with a number of companies over the course of my lifetime. When I was at the New York Stock Exchange, thousands of companies, and a lot of times what you find with some of the mining companies, right, the extraction companies, when you read their annual reports, you'll actually see how conscious they are of the communities that they operate in.
Oh wow!
And how they give back to whether it's housing, in the area where the mine is, or healthcare, or schools for the families. So if the one or more of the parents was working in the mine, the children could be taken care of through schooling. You look at some of how they give back some of the mine residue, some of the resources, they resell that, they give that back then to the community in funding. They create water plants and all sorts of things. So it really becomes, getting outside of just that pure profit aspect, and recognizing that we are part of, a much larger world, right?
This is also, you're right. And this is also why, but I know, Glenn, the way we met is through Long Island University and the company that I started with my business partner, Vitruvius Partners Group, because we came, the reason why we created this company in the first place is realizing that, change management, there's a certain approach to changing things, right? And God knows today we need to change, right? Usually people believe that to change, you need to look at a systematic approach, to look at systems, to look at procedures, to look at, things like this, which is great. I'm not saying it's not important, it is. But to me, it's secondary. It is a support system in a sense. You need to start with the human element. You need to start with the human being. Change starts with the human being. And what I love in what Lilian and I have developed at Vitruvius Partners Group is, we became expert in the sense of, making sure that we help organizations, especially in the tourism industry, address change by putting the human element back in the center of the equation. And I know you work on an important project with Lilian with LIU, and we're very excited about that. And that's this, to me, it's all about putting back the human element in the center. The rest is important, shareholders' value is important, of course, but to consider the ecosystem. I think the main lesson is that to put back the human element at the center, like Yamina, understand the story of Yamina, understand the dilemma that she may have, So that's by putting back the human element in the center, and then understanding your ecosystem as well. Understanding, the impact that each one of your decisions, and as business leaders, it is so critical, the impact. If only we were teaching our students on the impact of their decisions, even seemingly small ones. Wow.
Well, it's interesting. When I was younger and first coming out of college and things, they used to call it personnel, right?
Yeah.
Right. And now it's human resources, and maybe even in a larger extent, it's human capital.
Well, human resources is the term human resources is going to be out. It's already outdated in some ways, and I agree with that. So it's about talent. It's about
talent, retention, empowerment, right? Looking at your workforce. How can you enable them to succeed, right? Mm-hmm. And that could be whether that's you mentioned a little bit about minimum wages or vacation. I mean, it could be a flexible workforce. It could be working from home. It could be job sharing. there's lots of ways to come back and focus on that, right? Teaming up with your colleagues in the office, right? One of the interesting things I've always done as part of the consulting work I've done, I've worked at large accounting firms and the like. And when you work with people, right, when you have a department or you have a team, one of the things that I always try to do is to get to know them, right?
Yeah.
And that's oftentimes people, well, here's the project, here's your to-do list, and here's the time code. You have to put the time in for this and that. But then if you're the leader, right, and there's always a difference between being a manager and being a leader, right? Leaders need followers, and followers have to believe in what they're hearing, right? Managing can be more task orientated, right?
In my opinion, a manager, you need both leaders and managers, but a manager is here to make sure that there is a systematic approach to
Yep.
procedures, to tasks, that there is a system in place, in a sense. And that's great. Again, that's why consultants are great managers in a sense. So it's about a systematic viewpoint, whereas a leader is about an ideal viewpoint. It's about a vision. It's about, you're right, inspiring people.
Right.
It's a completely different mentality. You can be a great manager, a poor leader, or actually a great leader, a poor manager.
Yeah, 100%. When I would work with or join organizations and get to know the people I work with, I would kind of crawl inside. Well, tell me about yourself. Tell me about your life. Like if we have to work late one night, do you have any issues at home? Do you take care of a parent? In the morning, can you make an 8 o'clock call, or are you dropping off your daughter at school? And understanding that and recognizing that, okay, well, that's something that person needs to do, and that's important. And I have to value that as the manager or the leader, and come back and say, you know what, I'm not going to schedule 8 o'clock. That's not going to work for them, right? Or I teach on Wednesday, so why do the meetings have to always be on Wednesday? That kind of thing, and try to kind of move that around. It's interesting being a CPA and an accountant. The word reconciliation, I run into a lot,
But it has a completely different meaning in your trade.
That's what I'm much like your version better.
Well, both versions are important. I can tell you.
I'm a classic movie fan. And there's a famous movie from the mid 1970s called Network, and it's Peter Finch won the Academy Award for it. He plays this crazy newscaster named Howard Beale, and he becomes kind of like a modern day prophet, and he basically takes the people away from the companies. But since he's part of the corporation, he eventually gets summoned to the headquarters, where the leader of the company, the head of the corporation, Ned Beatty, plays him. He recently passed away. And Ned Beatty gives the ultimate speech in about 7 minutes, how there are no longer any individuals, Mr. Beale. There are only corporations, IT&T, IBM. They've replaced people. And he goes on to this, and you, sir, have messed with the balance, and you will atone. So he goes off on this amazing speech. But think about it, right? At the end of the day, and I used to always say this at the stock exchange, the work I did, I worked with the companies, right? I didn't do the trading. I wasn't down on the trading floor, and those guys were amazing. But I used to tell people, well, we're kind of like what's inside. We help provide the companies to trade the content. Without the work that we were doing and getting the companies to come, either through an IPO or a transfer, then there's no stock to trade, right? As you come through, and you talk about the stock economy versus the flow economy. I mean, and Yamina is a great example of that. The give and take that goes on, right? Even in a place like Bangladesh, there's no Milton Friedman there in Bangladesh that you're trying to get your hands around here. You're dealing with people's lives, right? As you go through what helps them throughout the course of the day, and then, as you said, it's interesting. It's a fine line between barbarism and utopia, right? And trying to get to that side.
But that's why I try to illustrate by having this road in the middle. What is it? Because you don't want to be one way or not. I mean, being at both, at either extremes is not good, obviously. But what is that right middle in a sense? Yeah.
Right, and the whole concept of ecosystems is just, or ecosystems is without a doubt. I mean, you're part of a much larger cause, right?
Mm.
And you think of everything that's gone on with the pandemic, right? And how, you're part of a household. The household is part of the block. The block is part of the town is part of the state, and it just keeps and building out. And you look at the healthcare workers and what they're going through and trying to get to the other side of goodness and curing and wellness, really, at the end of the day, right? Kind of taking back and saying, you know what, there's a value to this. And yeah, okay, there's an economic cost, and there's a way to do this, but there's the greater good, right? A lot of what you talked about, at least from the healthcare standpoint, I would characterize that as like population health. How you kind of come back and say it's that larger piece, right? To get to that greater good, you're putting forth all of these types of elements, but it starts with that person, right? And that person is a cog in a very large, can be a corporation, can be a small business, whatever the case may be, but that person makes it go.
Yeah, and makes an impact, and this is a little bit the message I'm trying to pass through that particular presentation.
Yeah,
and I think it's a message that that students, especially, I mean, business people, of course, but also students, because they're the future leader, they need to hear that. I miss, as you know, I did my MBA in your university, right, at LIU, and it was amazing, for someone coming from Europe to do an MBA there. It was like, wow, I had the time of my life. And I did it in 1996, so way back, right? And it was the time when it was all about shareholders value. It was all about, creating wealth in a sense. And when you studied an MBA at the time, it was all about that. And that has changed a little bit, it's been improved, but still, I take up today the example of the universities where I teach. And it's still a little bit too much of that. I don't see enough of talking about impact, talking about I'm not talking about social responsibility necessarily, because it's broader than that, but it's really about impact. And to me, that word summarizes it all. Even today's presentation, it's all about impact in a sense, and ecosystem. Those are the two, and we don't talk about this enough. And personally, I know that I suffer a lot in my leadership style or in my management style because of a lack. I try to correct that, but to me, I carry that message because I want to carry it for me first. I try to improve as much as I can on that first, because I realize that it's important. But we've not been educated like that. It's weird, not been educated like that. So, I wish that there was a class that pertains to impact, to social impact, or to reconciling business, because it goes a long way. It's about ethics in a sense. It's about, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of information or very important information that goes under that. Not like a 30 minutes presentation, but you can talk about it for hours, right?
Right. Now, it has a lot to do with empathy, right?
Empathy,
humankind, right? And taking that impact. And you look at students, you look at people, workers today. I was reading a report over the last few days of, people are leaving jobs because it's not satisfying them anymore, and something's missing, and people are missing the boat. And sometimes, and it's not just, okay, if it's an hourly wage, I'm going to raise it $1, or because the government said I had to, or a sign-on bonus. It's what kind of workplace am I putting forth? What am I enabling them? Can I make them have an impact, or do they want to make an impact? A lot of people choose their business or their livelihood around what really interests them, what kind of person they are, and how can they then make a living, kind of doing that. I'm a King's College graduate in Pennsylvania, and one of our credo that goes back to 1946 is we don't only teach you how to make a living, we teach you how to live.
A good one.
that's when you think about making an impact, making a difference, choosing a path. Do you go work for a corporation? Do you work for a not-for-profit? Do you find your own? You become an entrepreneur, find your own business. Through a lot of the leading entrepreneurs, we've met a lot of people doing social entrepreneurship. Right, they're starting off different types of businesses with these amazing missions and value statements, and doing some really great things here in the world at large.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, listen, we're coming up almost on the hour here. Wonderful conversation as always. You are the embodiment here of entrepreneurship. You're doing some amazing work with Lillian. Thank you for the time today. We look forward to continuing our conversation. I think you'll be back in a couple of weeks, and we'll do some more conversations. And this was a wonderful opportunity to spend some time with you. And thanks for sharing everything with our audience here. It was really fascinating.
Super. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you to Stelios. Thank you to One Business World and Glenn. It's always a pleasure to exchange with you. It's very enriching.
Thanks for the time today. We'll see you soon, okay?
See you soon.
All the best. Thank you. Bye.